First presentation, it's from Suad Bečirović, and topic is increasing the competitive advantage of halal business, independence between internal and external processes. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's a great pleasure. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a great pleasure for being here today with you. And thank you very much to the organizers, the Bosnia Bank International, and especially the Agency for Halal Quality here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As we already said, the topic of my paper is increasing the competitive advantage of halal businesses, interdependence between internal and external processes. This paper was co-authored with my dear colleagues, Professor Šemsuddin Plojević, who is not here today with us, but also Professor Enis Vukanović, who is here today, and Professor Haris Logić, who is also here today with us. Why this paper? I will try to be short and keep it short and simple, due to the limited time. And by this paper, the major goal of this paper is in fact to think, when we talk about halal, we often think about legal requirements. What is prohibited, what is permitted, what are the boundaries, what are the limits. But from an economic perspective, we know what are the legal requirements, but we have from an economic perspective to think how to be efficient, how to use the resources available in the best manner. So this is one of the major goals of this paper, in fact. And my colleagues and I were thinking about the fact how to increase competitiveness, how to increase the competitive advantage of an organization using the framework of halal, and thinking that halal with a good implementation will lead to an increase of competitive advantage. So when we talk about competitive advantage, a synonym to it, in fact, in modern management, is Porter's value chain. Porter's value chain, in fact, as you possibly know, divides all activities within a company into two types. The first type are primary activities. The second type are support activities. Primary activities, from the perspective of halal, is in fact what we are continuously talking about. We're continuously talking about whether a material is halal or haram, as we were able to listen some minutes before, on the one hand. On the other hand, we're analyzing, because every modern product, especially in the food industry, it is very difficult to see the primary source, and we can see many types of food using several thousand ingredients, and we are looking and trying in food, pharmaceuticals, clothing, and so on, whether there is any material which is prohibited. In fact, these are primary activities, which are, of course, very important. And looking and analyzing these primary activities, we had several thoughts how halal and the implementation of a halal certification will lead to an increase of competitive advantage. Why? First, because the whole process of quality management, and also the analyzing, for example, the analyzing of the halal of meat, leads us to a process-oriented thinking. A process-oriented thinking which is propagated now in modern management. We have to know what comes from the beginning to the end, from supplier to customer. How are all processes related, organized, and whether they are efficient or not. This is very important, first. Second, we need a quality management system, not only halal, but a whole system documenting all our processes, to know what somebody has to do and what not. What are the rules and regulations within our organization, and especially with regard to the stakeholders. Third, the whole halal, talking about halal products and processes, is in fact a question, a talk about innovation. As I said yesterday in a panel, we should not imitate, but innovate. We should not think in standard past frameworks which were defined by other people, often not familiar with the rules and laws of halal, of haram, or sharia. We have got our own mindset and we have to be innovative. We should not make the mistakes which were made in the past during not only the last years, but also decades and centuries. We are talking a lot about sustainability today, for example. One of the major causes for the environmental pollution and so on is in fact the greed, which is unfortunately a major part of today's economic system. Now when we are 5 to 12, when almost everything is too late, it will not be late inshallah, but we are talking about sustainability, environmental protection and so on. I think analyzing, and all details you can read in our paper which is published, of course, and we have got all regulations in the Quran, in the Sunnah, talking about, for example, the preservation of nature, resources, water and so on. And all these stuff, in fact, leads us not only to look internally within an organization, but every organization, no matter whether they are profit-oriented or non-profit oriented, but especially profit-oriented, should have the whole picture always in mind. What are the effects of our doing? And this leads us to another point within Porter's value chain, and these are support activities. When you look at this Porter chain, especially this part here in green, you can see it is talked about firm infrastructure, human resources, technology and procurement. In fact, thinking about it, we led to the conclusion that in fact we have to define our relationship with stakeholders. Not only persons or legal entities, but especially above all with our creator, but also with everything created, including nature and so on. We have to have, in order to have a continuous long-term competitive edge, competitive advantage of our organization, we have to respect every stakeholder. And that is another point in our paper, which is now the stakeholder concept is a modern topic, a hot topic in management, but I think analyzing texts from Quran, from Sunnah, it is quite clear stated that we have to respect every stakeholder. Keeping in mind both combinations, to have a good internal organization, a good external relationship with all major stakeholders will inshallah lead to a continuous long-term competitive advantage. This is in fact the major hypothesis of our paper. And therefore, I think to conclude it finally, in fact, if we ignore the rights of all stakeholders, injustice will inevitably lead to the destruction not only of an organization but also of society, as we all know. And we often see, for example, here in the Balkan countries, there's kind of intensive depopulation, not often due to material materialistic reasons due to low salaries and so on, often because the rights of an individual are not respective enough. It is today the day of Juma, and some minutes an hour is Juma time, inshallah. And every khutbah, the Imam finishes with the ayat, which you can read here. And we always emphasize justice. We should, I will not talk to anyone, but we should look into the mirror and ask ourselves whether we are just to ourselves, to our family members, to our society and our employees, whether we respect the rights of everyone, which are defined by law, secular law, religious law, and so on. There's much talk, but when there's much talk, there's less practice, unfortunately. Finally, last sentence. It's a qualitative analysis, this work, but inshallah in the next phase of our project, we want to analyze quantitative factors, indicators, how to analyze in which way, whether all rights are from a material point, from a point of money, respected or not, analyzing financial reports. And for example, here using a radar chart, when we have, for example, the blue square, then we would have a situation where all rights are respected, are equally distributed, but if one, for example, the rights of the investors or financiers are too much, heavily given to them too much money, automatically the right of the public, of the state, of, for example, employees are not sufficiently enough respected, which will inevitably lead to problems for any organization. And finally, this paper had the goal, in fact, to conclude, to initiate rather discussion than to give answers. But as I said earlier, we have to think within a certain framework. We have defined what is halal, what is haram, but within this halal, we've also to be efficient and try to use the resources as best as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suad Bektirovic. Actually, Dr. Suad is the director of the University of Novi Bazar. Thank you for your informative information about halal thinking in economy. I'll be happy to invite Dr. Alia Odovic from England University of Dundee.
From Scotland. Good afternoon. So my presentation is in a way continuation what previous speaker was trying to say. So we are trying to locate Islamic or halal industry within the broader scope of civilizational understanding of what we call it today Islamic moral political economy. So starting from discussion, the driving force of any industry is very much embedded within the framework that we know in the philosophical understanding, axioms. And that's what we will try to define it and structure it in a way. So I'm just trying to skip first part so that because of the time issue. So the starting point of this discussion will be very much economics, finance, but the main part of this all halal industry or factors are driven by entrepreneurial activities. So if the individuals do not start, they don't bring that element and trying to endorse halal, that will be by default lost case. So then there is a rationale behind, there's a self-interest, then maximization of individual. But in the same time, when we are looking into this, so we are working within the existing system of neoclassical economics, which very much endorse social, economic, and political aspect, but then that value-free. So when I say halal, that by default means value-loaded perception of products. So in the neoclassical economics, so what we know within the economic discourse, we know that economics is a value-free. So which implies I'm bringing now ethical religious values within this system, and that creates now a dichotomy. So theoretically, we are trying to understand where we are locating the halal as a driving force within the entrepreneurial sector. So what are the ingredients, what are the hidden features which will drive the industry? Now yesterday, some of the speakers have very much highlighted importance of halal or within the lab understanding. So how the different industries like pharmaceutics, medicine and others, they are trying to find those hidden features of halalness, if we can say it. But now this is the elements which we are bringing in the discourse, but then the theological part will have another implication, understanding of that, which we'll just discuss in the following slides. So that creates what we call the new moralities. If I'm bringing the halal elements, now different understanding, different standards will create a perspective of halals, and hence we will have a different approaches. In Bosnia, we might endorse what we call form-based understanding of halal, which means you are ticking the boxes of halal by form, which will be the Sharia experts will define what it means in that. But then if you are going towards the Western societies, they will be more interested to see the substance-based oriented, which is coming from the moral economy. Now, moral economy is defined what are the consequences that certain things or products are making. So if I'm saying that something is halal, what does that imply? It just does mean that something was slaughtered in this Islamic way, or it goes beyond. Now that beyond, some speakers yesterday highlighted in those hidden areas of discussion what might be, whether it is organically oriented, whether it preserves the environment, whether it's very much labor friendly or supply and demand friendly, whether you are using your local suppliers in the way you are structuring the products, and so on and so forth. So based from that, it creates the phenomenon. The halal industry become global, and it is covering the corporate, government, as well as the private sector. And it is a position of choice among the Muslim countries, but also non-Muslim countries in the European context is very much highlighted, because you find in every single case, I come from the UK, and you can have many halal authorities because you don't have unified Islamic perspective towards the Islamic issues. So each group might have their own authority. And that creates very much dichotomy, which approach of, well, that's also probably in Italy, in Germany, and all these countries, because we don't have a unified approach to the Islamic issues. Now, there is a fiqh academy, and yesterday's speaker was saying about fiqh academy as an institution, which is organization of Islamic conference, but these standards are very much voluntarily endorsed. So they are not bounding, as that is also applied within the Islamic finance, because IOFI standards which are produced, they are not bounding on any Islamic bank in the world, and hence that creates the problem. Now, this is the global momentum where is Islamic finance are sitting. As you can see, these are the countries that, of course, Malaysia is a driver. Turkey comes on the bottom in these sectors. We are not even on the map. We are so small. Yesterday, some speakers were telling us romanticized stories how we are the first. We are not even near that. Now, in terms of index score, again, you can see that UAE, depending on the area of the sector, you can see which one are the dominant and the driving the halal industry. That is in different, across the main categories. Islamic finance, as you can see, the Malaysia, and then it will come Saudi Arabia, because of the global assets are quite big. In the food industry, again, Malaysia is followed by UAE, Bahrain, mainly the large Muslim countries across the world. Now, what we are trying to search here, so this was just generic implication, what does mean that halal in that economic sector? But we are searching what drives the halal industry in the West, why we have so many refugees who settle in the European context, and they are adding the value to the industries. So we can see the innovations, how they are driven. Some of these innovations, especially in the early periods, were very much driven to find a solution. It was Muslim settlers in the UK, they needed halal food, which is primarily meat, and hence you provided that. So there was no innovation apart from you are just existing the models of the business, you are trying to add that Islamic touch, or we call it Islamic spices, and hence you get Islamic version. But they are not a result of Islamic approach. Now, as we can see, as the number outgrown in the Western side, you will try to see what drives the new innovations which are coming. So what are the new businesses that are coming? Of course, within the interesting part for us was creation of Islamic cartoons. Now, do we look whether the cartoon is slaughtered halal? It doesn't make sense because the parameters are now changed, and hence the whole approach. Now, I will skip this one because this will be now too much and to explain how that fits within the civilizational setting, and we will just go to the research part. Now, this is also a very important element which we are studying in the Western context. Where does that fit? Now, halal is a modern phenomena. It was never discussed in the classical studies as a halal because it was by default assumed that things are halal, even within the Christian Judea context. But then we have the modernity, and this is where we are looking from the emergence of the nation states. 150 years ago, many of the nations, Muslim, we were one country, one nation, so there was no divisions. Now, with the fall of the Ottoman Empire, you have a dormancy of Islamic law for around 60, 70 years. Now, after the re-emergence, what's happening that all these Muslim countries, they are trying to find identity, which means, what is your relations to the past? So from your today's standpoint, and we have heard some of the religious authority even here, when they are looking into the answers of today in the past by endorsing what? Fundamentalism, traditionalism. You are trying to find the answer of the fiqh rulings, which are very much individual, which defines the relation between the individuals, Ahmed and Muhammad or whatever. And today you are bringing into the corporate, which doesn't deal with the individuals. Halal agency is not Ahmed and Muhammad or Grand Mufti. It is many people involved. So now that's the change implications. And that's what creates ideological reasoning which we are struggling in today's modern context. So where we are standing in the modernity and the capitalism, which is a driving force even of the Bosnian and Herzegovina economy or any other economy in the world. Saudi Arabia is very much in itself capitalism. Now the question here that we are posing, is it involvement of Sharia scholars another way of creating Islamic Calvinism? I don't know how many of you are aware that Calvin is somebody who changed the Christian studies or Christianity from to the Protestant Revolution, which actually involved and endorsed modernization. Now, is the new approach that we are trying to do to the Sharia scholars to halalize existing models within the sectors so that we can get Islamic version? Now, that creates the many reconsideration. Are we creating the new modernity or new moralities in itself? Hence, so we can see in the past, in the pre-convergence, that is a moral economy approach, halal is embedded in individual relations. Now, with emergence of the capitalism 20th century, now this is where we are searching the space. How each country, each approach is trying to find its own space. And then we are coming to the last quarter where re-emergence of halalness, because we need to now endorse or include in our discourse, and hence this is where we are, convergent civilization. And that's what we are even calling in this conference. We are calling for such authentic approach which will have a collective understanding for the halal. So that is where we are setting the scenario of halalness within the discourse of economic studies. Now what we want to create is the result of that in terms of sustainable development. We will not go to that. Let's go to just directly to the research itself, which was conducted based on the 150 companies in the United Kingdom across these sectors. Now, the approach which we endorse are the existing ones. So there are three ways we are looking that something is halal. Most common one, or mostly endorsed one, is a fiqh or legalistic one, where the Sharia authorities or Sharia scholars will tell you, if you don't have these characteristics, by default you are halal. And these are the factors: no pork, no alcohol, no karmi, no riba, no garar. Now, depending on the industry, this will apply. If you are financial industry, then you are looking no riba, no involvement in prohibitive areas. But if you are dealing with food and medical or pharmaceutical companies, then it's other implications. Now the second one, which is also now much more popularized and more actually endorsed, is what they call it type. Now I see some people already use these terms, and different way we can approach that. It could be no animal cruelty. It could be also chemical free, no exploitation and trick action. Now that depends on the nature of the industry as well involved. Or fair trade is something that is becoming very much endorsed within the Western context, or philanthropy oriented, and so on and so forth. And the third one, which now the authors might use it, akhlaq. Now akhlaq, we know what this means, morality, but actually what we are here endorsing is a moral economy approach. Now moral economy approach was not developed in Al-Azhar University or any Islamic university. It is unfortunately developed by Karl Polanyi. He was a British author who was writing about transformation of the British society from the pre-modern and in modern. So what are the costs, or what was lost in the process of that transformation? And that's what they are looking into, that substance, or what they call it embeddedness. That is the key term that he used in his discourse. Now these are the elements which we can find within that proposition of defining akhlaq, but from very much Karl Polanyi, or what we call it Islamic moral economy. Now if we use this framework, now this is the methodology that we can argue about it, and I'm sure most of the agency will apply this. So ontological and epistemological sources of Islam will be the driving force from where the knowledge creation is coming. So ontology tells you how to look it, and epistemology will be the outcome of that knowledge creation. And then whole process of filter. But where is that moral screening process? That's what we are looking. Whether that moral filter, which needs to be endogenized in the process of creation or the driving force of the industry, is what we are looking in this paper. So the empirics is based on this conceptual model, fiqh ethics or type, this is a mistake, and then Islamic moral ethics, or what we call it akhlaq, whether they are driving the innovation within the industry. So whether that is causing that the new companies, new settings are coming within the European context. And hence, these are the hypotheses that we are coming, methodology that we use. But let's just go to the first part. So now, halalness, in this case, we are looking into the fiqh approach, and what actually within the learning tourism, you can see that very much within the learning context. So when we are talking about books, education, cartoons, documentaries, films that are created, documentaries per se, you'll see that the content of the moralness of embeddedness itself is a driving force on that industry, and hence it implies, so it's not very much related to the very much narrow fiqh understanding of halalness. Within the tourism, we didn't find any significance. Fashion as well is very popular with that type approach, what drives that industry. And then cosmetic and fragrance, nothing. Finance at all. Finance is the most problematic part within the halal discourse, because it is purely trying to find a halal solution for an existing model of bank, financial institutions, current account, saving account. So it is a very much driven by halalization, not halalness. And hence that creates very much critical perspective on the financial industry in what they are actually offering to their customers. I know probably BBI might not be happy with this, but this is the reality. Food and drink as well, and the gifts. Now this is very popular within the charity sector in the United Kingdom, because they provide the gifts, and this is very much shops where anyone, any citizen can donate their things, and now how that is driven by halal, nothing significant was also found. Now when we are going into much more detailed characteristic, within 2 minutes I will be done. Within the fiqh and type and akhlaq moralities, then you can see now which element of fiqh approach in learning is popular. But here in moral and akhlaq, or what we call Islamic moral economy, family friendly. This is the content substance is very much appropriate for family, and hence that is a driving force if you want to appeal within that sector to drive the innovation. If you go into tourism, again, is the same factor that is much more emphasized. Now fashion, is very much driven by modesty, and that is the key driving factors that is emphasized what will drive innovation within that sector. And then you can see within the others, just for a matter of time, what actually is driving. Now health and well-being, because there was a very much emphasized, is very much driven by non-consumption prohibitive factors. And no, we know that the gelatin is a big problem as a substitute in the medicine, but there is a still ongoing debate and acceptance within the pharmaceutical companies to endorse that. So different innovation will drive, but for some, like a health and well-being is very much driven by big corporate world, whereas the small individual scale of entrepreneurship, which we are looking into family businesses, then the context will be different and different implication will drive. Now, what is a problem in this? That none of our halal industries is not driven by an organic approach, is not driven by justice, which we emphasize. The whole moral purpose of Sharia is to bring the justice, and even the previous speaker mentioned that, but that doesn't come. If we run the questionnaire among the people who are employed by halal companies, so-called, then you will see that the payment is below average in most of the cases. And that's what triggers now the whole question of halalness. So that is the halalness in the form, but not in the substance. And hence, that triggers the issues. And finally, just to conclude it, as a result, we managed to come out what are the driving forces of the industries, and that create the matters depending of which one. Very quickly, is the ethics in food or fashion or tourism? Where is the point of the departure from where we are coming? And to conclude, because of the time factor, so tourism, finance, fashion, and main areas are grounded on Islamic norms, but mainly from the fiqhi perspective, not very much from other tools which we are expecting to see to be the driving force. Also, fiqhi ethics was predominantly visible in the halal food industry, and that is something that is very much nailed and mentioned. Tiebags is spread across into certain variation among all of them. It is very much relevant to the mainstream marketing. We have to accept that, because this is something that people will endorse even in the Western societies. They are not driven by the theological part of the halal element, it's but very much other elements that you are bringing on the table. Fair trade, organic, it's environmentally friendly. That's what they would like to see, to have much more global momentum. And with that, I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alia, for your presentation. You have a lot of revolutionary ideas. Agree on most of them. And inshallah, entrepreneurship in halal will be more. I'm happy to invite Ms. Ivana from Croatia to speak about halal food as a trigger in halal tourism. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the organizers. Thank you very much to our professor Mithat Yaksic, because he's one in charge that I'm here today. I have no presentations. To be honest, I hate presentations. I love more to interact with the public, unless we have some videos and other interesting materials to share. What was my topic? It is a halal food as a trigger of sustainable development of tourism in the rural areas. Thank you very much for colleagues' presentation before, because there were some common things that I share as well, that most of the companies are not triggered by sustainability, even in this case, but with the profit which is completely against of what we are talking here. The trigger for myself to speak about this topic was, as you know, I'm coming from Croatia. We are part, fortunately or unfortunately, we will see, of the European Union, and there we have a situation that goes under the radar in this moment, that we are required to completely eliminate old seeds and to accept GMO seeds, which you all know that everything has to be of the perfect shape, everything has to be of the same shape to be in accordance what the European Union wants. When I get back to my childhood, and I was born in 1976, I remember that the most tasteful, for example, tomatoes, was those one that were not perfect in shape, but was perfect in taste. So being the owner of Balkan's Luxury Concierge as a travel agency, we are the only halal certified agency, and I'm very proud of that. Also because I'm not a Muslim, I'm half Orthodox, half Christian, whatever, a big mix. But thanks to the agency for certification of halal in Croatia, I was very much fortunate to enter this part of a great story, and I found halal as something that we should all, if we move aside that, put aside that religious part, in fact we should all adhere to the principles if we want to be safe, if we want to be healthy, and if we want to feel good. I will just tell you one thing that I was very fascinated about when the ladies showed me how do you pray. So before they showed me what does it mean, I just thought it was a way of praying, and in fact it's not. Back to my topic, before the pandemic, we were all testimonies of mass tourism, which to be honest, I don't like, because it is something that is ruining our area completely, although maybe the government and the tourism board will not how can I say, be very happy about that, because even not only in Bosnia, but even in Croatia and Montenegro, they are counting numbers overnight, and in fact this is not what we want. Because being for centuries under Ottomans, under Venetian Republic, under Austro-Hungarian Empire, we are fortunate from one side to have a heritage in architecture, in culture, but also in gastronomy. So if you ask me, old seeds gastronomy is something that differs us from the other areas that are surrounding us, but also from the world, other world areas as tourist destination, and this should be a trigger to attract high quality travelers and tourists to our areas. Again, I will just give an example, which is here in the neighborhood. You have the only authentic Bosnian village of Lukomir that is at the height of more than 1,300 meters above the sea level, where you can experience exactly what I am telling you. So small groups are coming there, tasting local food, tasting halal food that is completely healthy, and there I don't have an information how much from the economic point of view they are earning, but what I know that they are earning a reputation of being a very interesting place to visit. So with food they are triggering and they are making a complete product, including the history, including the storytelling, which is also very important, and you can use food in every segment to connect as a connection to all the tourist segments. So to conclude this, I was very short, I hope you managed to follow me, but before I conclude, I would like to ask you, do you have in your countries any such village or any such place that somehow provides you with an experience of your local destination through the local food that is served. No one has a village?
Yes, we have in Turkey one.
Okay.
We have one in Turkey, in Bursa. It's all the Ottoman village, still in the traditional system until now.
Okay, thank you very much. And do you use food as a trigger to attract high-end clients?
Actually, I don't know if they have special food, but they still use the same old style cooking until now.
Excellent. So anyone else maybe has an example? Don't be ashamed. I know you maybe have. Just want to hear some of your examples, because why I'm asking this question? Because you know, and I told you before, that before the pandemic, that was a huge amount of travelers coming and visiting. Unfortunately, it is good to see that many people love to come not only to Bosnia, but also to other countries in our surroundings. But at the other side, this is not good for the infrastructure, this is not good for the local people. We have a situation in Croatia that local people are moving from their old town, or all the town cores, old houses, family houses, just to rent them. With the high-end tourism that can be gathered through the food, and halal food is definitely what they are looking like. I will just give you an example. 20 years ago, I was living in Italy, and we got shopping. We went to shopping, and I see peppers, one green, one yellow, and one red in packed. And I said to my boyfriend, then let's just buy it to see what it is. It wasn't. It was a plastic pepper with some colors added. And I say, listen, when we go back home, we were still not European Union then. We will bring peppers here. So it was something that I thought that it will never come, but it has come with the opening of the centers, commercial centers. With the raises of prices, unfortunately, the local producers are not competitive in comparison with big supermarkets. Okay, so what was the moral of all this my presentation? That we have to find a way to, but this has to be done first on the governmental and higher levels, because there are laws that has to prescribe, let's say, maybe it's not the good point, but I hope you understand, how to protect small producers and how to organize them to become strong suppliers. For example, in tourism, of hotels, of restaurants. I'm doing a lot of cruises, small cruises in Croatia. They all need to provide a good food. So let's think about how to do that. For example, how to start with that in Bosnia, because obviously having the highest percentage of Muslim inhabitants, it can be a trigger for the entire region. How we can, in fact, start to support the small producers to produce halal food, to provide that type of food to the restaurants, to the hotels, and all others chains. And maybe if you start that, Croatia will follow, I hope so, Serbia, Montenegro, and so on. And so the moral is, let's think maybe in the next forum we will have the better opportunity to discuss it in details, how how we can use the halal food to trigger not only tourism in rural areas, but the rural areas itself, and help those people to remain on their places where they have lived for years, and at the same time enable them to establish some higher levels of production of good food. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ivana, for this delicious topic. Actually, food is the thing that can unite everyone. In halal tourism, food unites all people. And here, point, that's when we travel for another place, we should not taste the same food. Where it become like duplication from each country. We should look for the interested, unique things. When I come here to Bosnia, they have zova drink, for example. It's not normal coffee or milk. They have Bosnian coffee. We should look for the different food here. The halal one, it's a trigger for halal tourism, as she mentioned. Inshallah, in the next event, we will have more about this one. We finish by this way, and we invite the speakers to take their certificate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all presentations. I will invite the Damir to share the certificates. First of them, it's Suad Bečirović. Ovdje se sam sve karte. Ma samo zajedničku sliku. Next is Ali Avdukić. And our last speaker, Ivana. Another picture. One more picture.